talk about another important story that we are tracking for our viewers, and this is about the ongoing crisis between Russia and Ukraine. An important development has taken place. Russian President Vladimir Putin claimed victory in the biggest battle of Ukraine war, declaring the port of Mariupol liberated after nearly 2 months of siege, despite hundreds of defenders still holding out inside a giant steel works. In a televised meeting with his defense minister inside the Kremlin, Putin said there was no need for a final confrontation with the last two defenders who were boxed in after surviving nearly 2 months of Russia's siege. Mariupol, once home to 400,000 people, has been the scene of by far the worst fighting of the war and its worst humanitarian catastrophe, with hundreds of thousands of civilians cut off for nearly 2 months under Russian siege and bombardment. Journalists who reached this site during the siege found streets littered with corpses, nearly all buildings destroyed, and residents huddled, freezing in cellars, venturing out to cook scraps on makeshift stoves or to bury bodies in gardens. So heartbreaking scenes have come from Mariupol. Joining us on the broadcast this evening is Anil Trigunayat, former Deputy Ambassador to Russia. Ambassador Trigunayat, appreciate you joining us here on Urban Debate on Mirror Now this evening. Russian President Vladimir Putin says Mariupol has been liberated. What does this development really mean amidst this crisis between Russia and Ukraine, in your opinion?
Well, I think that the Russians have been wanting to create some kind of a buffer by taking access to the Black Sea completely now, or the Sea of Azov, where Mariupol is located, and is very strategic port for several reasons for Russia. And therefore, now it is also, by capturing this, they would be strategically connecting the territory of the east of Donbass that is there with Crimea. So this is a strategic victory for them. At the same time, of course, as you have mentioned, that there has been a huge disaster and firing that has been going on, bombing that has been going on for nearly 2 months. But now there are already in the Azovstal plant, steel plant, which is one of the biggest plants there, and which has many tunnels underneath. And there are supposed to be 1,500 Azov battalion people and some civilians who are inside. So the defense minister wanted to go all out and take them out, but I believe that Putin has said that leave them alone and just surround it so that you cannot go out or come in. Now this provides him a possibility of exchanging prisoners at some point of time, where the several Russians who have been captured, and they might get an exchange. The Ukrainian government has already approached Russians for conducting the negotiations or talks without any preconditions. So I think that this particular victory can be called a definitive victory for the Russians, who had to fight it very hard to get this.
You're calling it a definitive victory for the Russians, and definitely it's going to further boost the confidence of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Post the talks in Istanbul, Ambassador Trigunayat, we haven't really heard anything about the next round of talks between Russia and Ukraine. Where do you see the situation heading as the kind of developments are coming? Do you see hopes of any more talks, or do you think that now this war is going to continue for some more time before we see peace?
Well, it does not look like that there will be talks tomorrow on achieving the peace objectives, because what is happening is that Russia is continuing to flex its muscles, and so are the West. And the Ukraine is, as I always mentioned, has become the playground for the West in this war. And they are pumping in arms and ammunition, more and more of it. And when this happens, then Russia would not like to be on the defensive. And that is why today they have also launched one of their longest intercontinental ballistic missiles, Marat, which is of course muscle flexing. But at the same time, the Russia is keeping all its options open. But now that from their strategic perspective, I believe if they have been able to take control of these two ports. Crimea is already with them since 2014, and they will be able to now hold on to the Mariupol and some minor areas that are remaining. So they will be able to create a corridor from east to south. And that serves their immediate objective of creating a buffer between the Russian territory and the Ukraine, which is pro-Western.
Okay, Ambassador Trigunayat, now we are also getting reactions from Ukrainian side on this big development around Mariupol that has taken place and the claims that are being made by Russian president. Ukrainian President Zelensky says that Russia controls most of Mariupol, but Ukrainian forces remain in part of it. So the resistance that many have been talking about, the Ukrainian resistance, it's still continuing. Ukraine is continuously trying to defend its own territory, and now at the same time these claims are being made by Russia. So how will you like to respond to the statements that Ukraine is making, and what next now? Because not many, of course, are talking about it the way people were talking when this conflict really started. But what next?
Well, I think that eventually they have to settle down for some kind of a peace. And in this peace, to a great extent, nobody is a winner. That is how I look at it. Everybody is a loser in the bargain. Ukraine is losing its territory definitely, and many of these places will become independent under Russian tutelage. Both the port cities are going to stay with the Russians as a strategic ports for them, for their military ventures. Odessa may not be captured because of several other reasons, but because that will be the only port available to then Ukraine outside. So I think that the Russians will claim it before 9th of May, which is their, as Victory Day. There's some kind of a victory that they have actually achieved. But in these kind of wars and civil wars where the civilians start defending and the armies use civilian areas to fight, there it becomes extremely difficult and the casualties are very high. Because at that time, the civilians become the targets also, not as civilians, but as the people who are fighting, and so they become the soldiers. That is the problem here that we are facing. But I think that at the end of the day, one has to also see that the reports that you get from the media, from various things, that there are a lot of spinning going around. So the exact reports, correct reports, you don't get. But the fact that the Ukrainian president has also asked that they are ready to, or their negotiator had said that they're ready to have talks with the Russians without any preconditions, indicates that Mariupol is lost.
And simultaneously, we are getting updates from the United States of America as well as we speak, Ambassador Trigunayat. And Biden administration has announced additional military aid to Ukraine, and simultaneously, US is questioning the claims by Russian president. So just like what you were telling us just now, that, so far, nobody really knows what exactly is happening on the ground because claims are being made by both the sides.
Yes, this is always that's what the war is. We call it as disinformation warfare or psyops, and which is an integral part of any warfare. So I think that this is something that continues, and as far as most of the English media or the Western media is concerned, it is holding the key at the moment. But on the ground, it looks like, because it's not from now. I mean, for quite some time, the Russians have been in a vantage position as far as Mariupol is concerned, and it has been significant for them to do so when they moved out of the outskirts of Kyiv, basically. So I think that this is their strategic objective, which they have achieved. They will continue to force. Of course, the resistance is going on. As I mentioned, this steel plant, which is said to be 5 or 6 stories below, there are various tunnels and all, in which about 1,500 soldiers of Azov battalion and others, which are said to be Nazified to a great extent, even by the American Congress at one time. So they are there. They are a ferocious force to fight, but they have been under siege for quite some time. How long can they hold on is the major question.
Right.
As far as the assistance concerned from America and the West of pumping arms, ammunition, that can prolong the war more rather than close it.
All right, Ambassador Trigunayat, appreciate you joining us here on Urban Debate on Mirror Now and sharing with us your perspective on the developments that are taking place in Ukraine. We'll, of course, be coming back to you for more on this.